Hello, Yandex. We are really excited to be here. Our first time in Russia. All right, can I give a short introduction about myself? A few years ago, I started studying architecture. And at architecture, prototyping became an important part. Like we used to make all models by hand, it used to take a lot of time. And now we could finally make models just by printing them for your computer. You have 3D printers and you had all these new kind of technologies, which were really exciting. And then code became such an important part because you could automate all these steps which used to take a lot of time. So due to these prototyping tools, we were closer to the real product. So we could see what it's actually going to be like. And we see the same kind of thing happening right now in software, that there was a huge difference between designers and engineers. There was a huge middle part which wasn't answered. So today I brought Krijn as well. Framer is based in Amsterdam, where we are working with a small team of 12 people on Framer, about half of them engineers and half designers. But we all have an influence on the product, so we see ourselves all as product designers. That's how we like to see ourselves. All right, the schedule for today is I'm going to give you a short introduction into prototyping, your first steps with Framer. And then on the second part, Krijn is going to tell you a bit about the background, how the code works, and we're going to walk you through a few examples. So, prototyping is just design. What I just told, like prototyping used to be a really small part, and there was mostly the dependency, like the designer needed an engineer before they could feel how it worked. There was a huge difference between the design part and the real product in the end. And people slowly started to experiment more, like designers went into using these prototyping tools or using websites, just plain HTML, CSS, to build something that felt more like the real thing in the end. Because there's so much that you miss if you're just seeing static designs. And that's how Framer started as well, just as a JavaScript framework for the web. And we slowly tried to solve all these problems to streamflow the design process. So let's give you a quick example of this. I got an idea about a sortable list in my mind, and I want to show it to you. And I got all these ideas in my mind, how I can take an object, like a list item, pull my finger down, drag it around, put it in another position. I'll probably start out with a sketch to visualize it for you. It might look something like this. From now on, probably the ideas I got in my mind are way different than yours, because this is just a really basic sketch, and there's a lot of things missing from it. So my next step might be going into Photoshop or Sketch and making it feel way more realistic. Something like this. And now your feedback is probably going to be something like, do I like the font size? Do I like the font? Do I like the background shadows? But it's not about the real idea about why, in the first place, did I want to make this? How does it behave? What does it look like? So it's probably going to be all about visuals. So then into Framer, you can now see that I pick up a list item. I can drag it around. The drop shadow pops up. It scales to a larger size. How the numbers change while I move it around. All these really important parts of the design become clear, and you can start talking about whether it's actually a good idea or it might be really stupid or whatever. It's really near the end product. So with Framer, we set out to make it possible for designers to invent new interactions, not just the designs that you already know. Like there's a lot of other prototyping tools which make it easy to experiment with already familiar patterns in prototyping, like screen flows and certain transitions, which we all know. But really inventing new interactions is hard, because you need access to the real deep level underneath just the visual elements. So that's what with Framer we set out to make it make the steps easy from the designs you're already used with to making it fully interactive. So Framer brings you all these powers of the web, which there are a lot, and all makes them combines them into one simple tool. So when you're used to HTML, CSS, and other stuff, you need to know about all these technologies before you could start playing around with it. So Framer all combines is in one simple IDE, one simple app with a code editor and a visual part. So here's a quick overview of what Framer looks like. We have the code on the left. In the middle, you see a list of all the layers which have been created either in Photoshop or Sketch or in code. And on the right, you see the fully interactive prototype. And this all happens in real time. So whenever you change a variable, like, for example, the background color, it's reflected on the right. So you see it switching. So that's one really strong part, that there is no compiling. I don't know if you're familiar with the term compiling, but it used to be that if you create an app, you write down some code, you have to run it, see if it works or not, and then after some time you get to see the result. In Framer we don't have that. There's no time in between writing the code and seeing the feedback. It's immediate. And in the middle you can enter in edit mode and have the familiar properties panel. You might know it from Sketch and Photoshop. And a nice thing is that any edits in the property panel are immediately reflected both in the code and in the visual tool on the right. So here, we're just changing a bunch of properties and switching between prototyping, coding, interacting with it, all in real time. So, code, we think that code is actually the best tool designers are not using yet. Code is actually really old, of course. It's like 30 years old, and it used to be really hard to get started with. It was really hard engineering and debugging. There were so many things you needed to know before you could use it. That was probably the reason that most designers were such a different bunch of people than the engineers. So two different groups, which had a lot of difficulty communicating with each other. As a designer, it was frustrating that you had the dependency on a developer before you could see the actual product spring to life. So that's why we think that code is really important as a tool for designers. So here we have a grid of examples that have been created using Framer. For example, on the top left, we have a small watch app. And you can prototype watch apps. You can switch to every device, also Android and iPhone. And it has all the touch things you're used to, like gestures enabled. The second one from the top left, you can see that we even support videos, transitions, parallax effects, like for example, the map app in the middle, one on the right, 2 seconds from the right. And some Apple TV app with a 3D transform with a nice glowing effect which responds to the position. So as you can see, as Framer is such a flexible tool, you can go really far into customizing your designs and hopefully finding new and helpful interactions. So here's an example from George Credenberg, one of our Framer advocates in the Facebook group. He built a prototype for the live video reactions. And the nice thing about this prototype is that it's using real data. So they had some people for testing come over to their office, and they could log in with their normal Facebook logins, and they would suddenly see their friends popping up with comments on their picture. So it really felt like the end product. And some people were like, holy shit, is this already built? No, it's just a prototype, but it felt so real. Yeah, that's awesome. We think that's really cool about Framer, that you can make it look really, really great in a short amount of time. Here's another example of Min Sang, who's working at Google now. He was actually picked up by Google due to his framer experimentations. So you can see what it can lead to. They build a keyboard with Google search inside the keyboard, so you have access to Google from every app. And here's another example of things you can do. We have a VR component, so you can actually experiment with VR inside of Framer. And this VR data is coming in real time, so you have information about the heading, the direction you were looking at, and the elevation, which is how high you're aiming. And you can use this real data for interactions. And it shows also the power of Framer, because it's code, it's so extensible, you can build whatever you want on top of it. All right, we have a Facebook group with almost 15,000 members now. There's so many kind people in there willing each day to help each other out. So if you're stuck on a Framer design issue or get stuck on a problem you don't know how to solve, we really recommend asking some people here in the group. They're always answering in minutes. It's a great place. And there's also a lot of sharing happening. So people doing new experiments, sharing their stuff. And we got them all together on our resources page, so you can find text tutorials, video tutorials, some written papers about certain aspects from really beginning tutorials to advanced. So it's a great place to find new learning material. All right, now we're going to go to Krijn with the workshop.
Okay, does this work? See? Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna introduce you all to like Framer the tool, and I'm gonna give you a short introduction of how it works and what it looks like, and then after that we're gonna open our MacBooks, and then we're gonna get started with some examples. So first I'll give you a short introduction, and let me first talk a little bit about myself. So I'm a product designer at Framer. So I designed the tool, the website with 5 other designers, or 4. And yeah, which is a lot of fun. And as Jonas already said, we're based in Amsterdam. And if you would like to move to Amsterdam and are a good designer, just let us know. And if you know Framer really well, after this workshop, of course, you'll all know this really well. Now let us know, and maybe we can talk. Okay, so Framer is built on a couple of building blocks. So basically, we have 4 things. That's layers, animation, states, and events. I'm going to give you a short introduction into every building block. So basically layers, we probably all know layers from Sketch, Photoshop, any design tool that you use. Layers are these vague things that you can assign values to. We call those properties. And properties can be things like the position, the scale, the size. There can be a lot of things. And as you might see in Framer, this is exactly the same in code. Like, who here writes CSS or knows how to write code a little bit? There's a lot of people. So basically, you already probably know this from CSS. It looks a lot the same. It looks really like coding CSS. And also, if you use Sketch, it will probably also look very similar. So yeah, that's basically what a layer is. In a layer, we can also do all the same things that we can do in Sketch. So we can group them. We can make them mask other layers. We can put them inside each other. We can basically, it works like any design tool, but then in coding. So that's pretty interesting. Then the next building block is animation, which is probably why you'll use Framer, because we have a lot of stuff for animations. So basically animation, as you might know, an animation is basically this thing where you have one layer and you change the properties of that layer to make it look different. And there's a time span between that, and we can do a lot of things in that time span. So basically in an animation, we could just change one property, so we could make it bigger, make it scale. But we could also make it bigger and opaque, or change the opacity, change the height, position. We can change pretty much anything about a layer. And then another thing that we did in Framer is we built our own physics engine in Framer. So when you do animations, it's a lot about how a product feels and how you can interact with it and the feeling that it gives you. And with our physics engine, you can use real physics in your animations, which make it look nice. Like, probably a lot of you know iOS has this. Like iOS feels nice because you can drag things around and you get feedback. It actually feels good, and that's what a product is all about, I think, in design, and which is a really important aspect. So we can also do that. I mean, we can also set the time of an animation. We could also set a curve to easing, which we already know probably from CSS or other things. Then another building block that we have is states. So if we're designing, we know that a lot of objects in our design, or a lot of layers, pretty much we can call them, have just two states that they're in. For example, I'm designing a hamburger menu. A hamburger menu has two states. It's closed and then it's opened. So what we noticed is that a lot of the designs that we do have a lot of states that they're in. Like every layer has a lot of states. So we built our own state machine so you can really easily transition between those states with an animation. So basically what you do is you add a state to a layer and just change the properties to it. Just like I want this layer to have a state where it's opened. So the X value, the X position, will be half the screen size or something like that. So when we do this, we can really easily add other states and transition between those. So I can really easily make a hamburger tutorial. You see this later. I think the first example that we're going to show you guys is also working with states. And you can really see how quickly you can actually get started and make something work. And then the last one is events, the last building block, which is how we interact with our products. It's about all the transactions that you can do with your mobile phone or your laptop. So what we build in Framer is you can click, you can drag, multi-touch. You can pretty much do anything that you can do with your mobile device. I think, yeah, we even have support for force touch, so you can pretty much design anything, which is quite unique because in the end, it's all about the dimensions that you can use your phone with to do your designs, because you want user input. And then over time, we also noticed that, like in every design, there are a lot of components that we're reusing. So there's like, you have a lot of scroll views or pagination, sliders. Those are things that we're all using in our designs to pretty much get information to other people. So because we noticed this, we thought, why don't we make layers, pretty much smarter layers for you guys that you can really easily get started with. So we built like a scroll component, a page component, like Jonas said, a VR component. So you have all these things that we already made for you, and you can really easily plug into those and make something scrollable, or have pagination, or make a VR, design for VR. So those are all things that are really easy with Framer. And then not so long ago, we like quite of the next step, code can be quite scary as a designer. Like a lot of people find it pretty scary to open an editor and start coding because, well, it's not very visual. So what we set out to do was make it easier to learn how to code, but also to interact with your code, because we noticed over time that code is not the best way to position things and do all those things, but it is the best way to do animations and explore new interactions and make things that haven't been done before. And because of that, we built this visual thing, we call it autocode, and it writes the code for you. So you can learn how to code with visual tooling. So you can really easily get started with Framer, with coding. So if you're like, we think that after you learn Framer, which got a lot easier, after that you'll be able to code anything pretty much. You'll learn how to code. You'll learn JavaScript. You'll get started with that, which is quite an added value. You have the big discussion that should designers code on the internet, and this is pretty much the way that you can learn how to code if you want to. So that's pretty interesting, I think. So as you can see over here, we're just adding a state to it. I think just like with visual tools, you can just press the plus button and we'll just write the code for you. It's pretty smart and you don't have to do anything. And then as you see on the right side, we can just drag it around and then changes the code on the left. So you can see, like this is pretty familiar from Sketch or other design tools that you already know. And you can work the same way with code now. Then another thing that we have is you can edit directly on the canvas. So as I said, the thing that we noticed is that code isn't the best way to position things and to pretty much like design static, but it is the best way to design interactions. So why don't we take the best of both worlds and merge that into one place? And that's what Framer is all about now, is that you can design your interfaces in Framer and also immediately interact with that. So as you can see, you can just like any design tool, just drag it, rotate it, pretty much do anything with it. But then you can also immediately interact with it, with multi-touch in this case. which is quite cool. So another thing that we have in Framer, which is like used a lot, is working together with other design tools. Like I don't know if you know this, but Sketch is also based in the Netherlands, also from Amsterdam. So they're good friends of us, and like we try to work together with them to get a really nice integration with Framer. So you can, for example, do your visual design in Sketch and then go for interaction design to Framer. So what we built is this really nice importing way to import your designs straight from Sketch into Framer and immediately start playing with it. So you can really quickly pop into the visual design tool and then to the interaction design tool so you can validate your IDs, which is pretty easy. So as you can see, I could just press import, have my open Sketch file, just import it, add some code to it, and then I can immediately start playing with it on the right and see if my ID works, give it to some users, see how they interact with it, and then see, is it the right ID, or should I go back to Sketch? And until you got that moment where it all feels nice and you did all the curves nice, and you can just give it to a developer, and that handoff is now a lot easier, because I don't have to tell like normally a design process would probably be you would go in Sketch and have the static design, you give it to a developer and you say, I can see it when it's done. And then like a couple weeks later, he's done, he made this thing, and then you're like, as a designer, nah, this is not what I imagined. And then you have to start 2 days of fine-tuning, making everything right. But what if we could just be the developer or communicate with the developer directly? That would be so much easier. So for this, it would be like he would already get all the curves, he can feel how it should work, and then there's no handoff. You're the developer, you're part of the development process and the design process. And the developer is the same thing. And I really believe that that's the future of what design should be, and that's the way how we should work together in the design process. So next up, we'll be talking about, we'll be grabbing our MacBooks, and we'll get started with some framering. I got this URL on the bottom over here. If you can go there, there are some examples in there that you can download. I don't know, it's very readable.
Sorry guys, I would like just to remind you to turn on the screen recording, please.
Yeah, I already have it on.
Oh, super.
It's great. I'll leave this open for just a couple seconds. Okay. Who already use Framer? Like, has already played with it? 5 people. Who knows Framer, or for who was this the first time? First time Framer? Knowing about it? Nice. I like it. Okay. So everybody got the URL? Like in the workshop, I'll be doing some examples, and then Jonas will be walking around to help you guys if you have some issues, and then when you get questions for us,
and
just
never
let us
be
know.
afraid to just ask as always.
Yeah, just be open to ask, and then
we want to make sure that you don't get stuck, because if you're behind, it's pretty hard to follow up.
Yeah, so if there are questions, just raise your hand, and then let us know.
Yeah, guys, if you have questions, look for the microphone, and you know the routine: the name, the question, everything. So
maybe we can also do some just like general questions right now. If you have questions about Framer. Has anybody got any general questions about Framer and want to know something? Or just want to get started with the tool and then afterwards see? Okay, we'll do that.
We've got a question here, okay?
So, cool.
But we're going via the translation.
Yeah, let me know.
Я хотел узнать, почему бы не сделать разработчиков-дизайнеров еще ближе, и во Framer используется CoffeeScript, но разработчики, они такие люди, они любят все, CoffeeScript не очень поддерживается сообществом разработчиков. И почему Framer не использует, настоящий JavaScript? Сережа Матвеев.
Well, that's Sergey here, and
okay.
He basically asks, why do you use CoffeeScript instead of real JavaScript? And he claims that the development society, community, they frown at the CoffeeScript, I guess. So the question is, why CoffeeScript, not the real JS?
Yeah, well, Framer is already like 4 years old now, when we started. And then ES6 wasn't really well supported in the browser. So by that time, CoffeeScript was really nice features that were missing. Like a lot of the JavaScript was really hard language to learn. There are so many mistakes you can make, and that's the first reason. Like most of the first errors users got into were fixed by CoffeeScript. There are also some other issues with CoffeeScript, of course, like white space, for example. Whenever you have a space or a tab, and there's a miscommunication between your code and it falls apart. So there's, of course, in every language has its advantages and its disadvantages. And now that ES6 is out, we're of course thinking about whether we might make the switch. But since our entire code base is CoffeeScript now, it's not that easy. But we're of course thinking about it.
Yeah, and then just why we did CoffeeScript in the beginning instead of JavaScript, it was just because CoffeeScript is a lot easier with like syntax. There's almost no syntax, so it's way easier to learn as a designer. And it also looks a little bit like CSS when you take it into Framer with layers and everything, which makes it a lot easier to learn. So for us now, it's like CoffeeScript is, I think, the thing that we're going to stick with for now. But we're definitely looking to the future for ES6 and other solutions to get like more advanced writing in there. Thanks. Any other questions?
Thank you, guys. I would just like to say that I guess it's fair that we do not translate the answers back because, okay, guys, the lecture itself is in English, so we will translate questions, like, you know, to help you formulate the thoughts. But I guess we're not translating answers back, and it seems it's pretty okay for you to communicate. Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
You're the best.
Any other questions? Things you might want to know about Framer? Nothing? Okay, then we're going to get started. Okay. So, let's see. So you all got this folder with like some files in there. And then we're going to use those folders for like some examples, making some examples and making Framer work and slowly learning how Framer works and creating more advanced prototypes. So our first thing is going to be with our friend Buzz here. And we're going to open, just going to open Framer. Everybody got Framer installed? Yeah? So we're just going to open Framer and create a new prototype. So you can just press Command N and then it will open from the launch screen, or just a plus. And as you can see, we got the simple editor. And on the left side, like we already showed you, you have the code. On the middle side, you have the layer panel, so you can inspect your code. On the right side, you'll just see your prototype, and you'll see layers, and you can interact with those. So if you get your cursor over there, you can also see that you can now click. There's nothing in there, but you can click. Then on the top side of Framer, we have a couple of features. On the left side, on the top, you have the insert menu, so you can just easily insert a new layer, for example, or insert new states to that layer, and we're going to get started with that in a little bit. Then you also have importing, so I can just press import, and when I have a sketch file open, it will automatically recognize this, and I can just import it, and it will automatically position everything, and we'll get it ready for you to start interacting with it. Then another thing is the docs, which are probably the most important thing for you now to learn, which is docs are all about like documentation on the coding and on how it works. So this is really important when we are stuck or we want to know if you can do something in Framer. We can just search for it in the docs, and there will be like an answer for us to look forward to. So let's say that I want to learn how to do an animation. Like I don't know anything about animation. I can just type animate, animation. Oh, here's the thing about animation, more about animation. Let's take a look. Oh, here's the code about animation. And it gives you a whole explanation of how you should animate things, how it works, what it does, and then also all the other features about animating. So you can listen, you can stop all the animations, you can see all the animations that are currently running, you can check if something is animating. You can stop it from animating, listening to animations, and like there's a lot of stuff in there. Like you can pretty much look for anything that we have in Framer. So this is where you'll learn and get started with Framer. And also for advanced use, I work at Framer, but I still use the docs every now and then because it's getting big. So another thing is you can inspect things. Because we're built on a web browser, you can just really easily, just like you know from web development, if you did that before, then you can just inspect in the console and see what's going wrong. So we already did some error handling in Framer. So if I create a new layer, let's say that I'll drag it and I'll just make a mistake. Like I'll put another tab here and it's a height. And then over in the bottom, it will now say that I have an error. So we'll see that there's something wrong with this thing. And then it says on line 3, because you can see that there's a red tree over there, there's something wrong with my code. So I can see, yeah, this doesn't look right. I should probably do this and like make it a bit bigger so you can see it. And now we can really easily solve bugs, or if something is not working, you have to look down there and see if there is something red, and then you can see what's wrong. And you can see on what line there's a mistake. So another thing is snippets. So our community does a lot of work, like there are 15,000 people in there, and they make amazing things, and you can really easily use those. So snippets are a really easy way to get some code and save it. So for example, or just for myself, like for example, I make a lot of scroll interactions, but I made this custom scroller, which allows me to, I don't know, scale things while I'm scrolling. Then it's really nice if I can save that code and reuse it. So that's where snippets are for. There are like a lot of stuff in there that's used a lot. So for example, I can just say like I want a custom device. So now we can create a custom device. This is a custom iPad. But if I'm designing for this new device I'm developing at some company, and like I'm designing Google Glass, I can just make a Google Glass device in there and start developing for Google Glass or prototyping for Google Glass, which is quite interesting. So yeah, that's another feature that's in Framer. They can also share your designs. So we'll say that let me change it back to the iPhone. Let's say that I want to share my design. I can just press share. First I have to save it, so I'll just say example. And then we can just share it. And then what's really nice, it will share it to the web. And it will just be here. And we'll make this nice URL that's hidden, so nobody will find it. And then you can just share your design. This is an empty design, but you can immediately interact with it. So you can send it to clients, to developers, pretty much to anyone that you want to show this, or share it on social media if you like what you made. And then also open it immediately in Framer. So that's a nice way of sharing your work and sharing what you're working on. Then another thing is Mirror. So we recently, or like actually 2 days ago, launched our iOS app, which is quite nice. Jonas built it, and it's pretty cool. So you can really nicely, just like I think you all know Sketch Mirror probably, like we also built that for Framer. So now you can really nicely see your prototypes on your native device and also save them, which is quite a nice feature. If you want to do user testing, you can always have it with you, just on your phone, and go into Framer, the Framer app, and then you'll just have your work in there that you made, and you can just give it to anybody. If you're in a bar and you want to show off your work to random people for user testing, then just give it to them, and you'll see how it works, which is quite cool. So that's what Mirror is for. We have an Android mirroring app which someone in the community built, which is awesome, and then the iOS app that we built ourselves. Then we can also really easily present our work. So let's say that I want to present my work in a meeting, or just to my parents because I'm really excited about this thing that I made. I can just press present, and then we get this nice view of the prototype, and we can interact with it. So I can really nicely present my work to the people that I work with and show them how this product works. Then another thing is devices. Like, of course, the context of what you're working in is really important as a designer. Like, it's really important what you're working with and how your user interface should look and what device it should be. So that's why we work together with Facebook on getting all these amazing devices in there. And then you can really easily just start designing for an Apple Watch, or start designing for the Google Nexus 6P, or the Apple iPad. So we pretty much got all devices in there. And if it's not in there, so for example, I want to design for Apple TV, then I can just create my own device from the snippets. It's already in there. So that's pretty nice way to start designing for all devices. Then another thing that I can do with those devices is I can just get a device in there, and I can rotate it, so I can also design for the landscape. So that's another thing that we have to think about, or transitions to the landscape, which is also which can be important for a design. Like if we're YouTube, this is like super important for video. If we want this design to rotate, like everybody rotates their phone to go and watch a video, which is an interaction that we have to think about. Like, how is this video gonna turn around and then hide the other content? Those are all things, and that's interesting thing. And then another thing that we did with Facebook is get, for presenting reasons, get some nice hands in there. And then you can just really easily use those hands and then also just share it with the hands, so it will be nicely presentable, so it can feel a little bit nicer, look a little bit nicer, like this looks nicer than just a device. So that's quite nice. And then you can also just, like by hand, like we already said, Framer automatically reloads the stuff on the right, so it immediately shows your results of what you're working with. And then on the right side, you can also reload it manually or change the scaling, so I can zoom in or zoom out. So that's pretty nice, but I'll just leave it to fit for now because it will work best on the screen. Okay, just like I said, in the folder which we have, let's close this. We have Buzz Lightyear here, and we're gonna start animating Buzz. So as everybody opens that folder, what's really nice now is that it's just an image. I can just really pick it up, and just drag it into Framer. And now it will automatically show that Buzz is now in Framer. Just make it a little bit bigger. Okay, like this. So now Buzz is in Framer, and we can start animating with him. So one nice thing about the feature that we just did is we can really visually edit Buzz. So if you click the icon that's left to the layer, you'll see that it becomes editable. So you can just, like any design tool, start editing it. So we can just drag him to the bottom if you want, align him, just like that. Maybe scale him a little bit. If you press Command, you will get this nice scaling tool, which allows you to scale it really rapidly, or just really, or just rapidly, or just really softly. So that's quite nice. We're going to make Buzz a little bit smaller. So it doesn't matter how small you make him, just a little bit smaller, just like this. I'm just going to leave him over here. So now we'll have Buzz Lightyear standing at the bottom there. What we can now do is just get to the Insert menu on the left top and add a state to Buzz. So we're going to animate Buzz between two states. So let's add a state by going to the Insert menu, pressing State, and then choose Buzz, because we want to do that layer. As you can see now, we'll be able to edit Buzz, like in the states. So we'll just have Buzz over here, and we can just drag him to the top if we want. Maybe rotate him a little bit, just like any design tool. Just go to the corner. With Shift, you can rotate it 15 degrees, or you can just like start doing it normally. Like we want him to be a little bit bigger, I think. I think that's also nice. So we're going to make him a little bit bigger, maybe just in the screen. Okay, now I position Buzz at 2 positions. So he now has a state where he's flying, where he's in the top of my screen. I can now really easily add an event to it. So I can just go into the Insert menu and press Event, and then go to Buzz. And then I want to add probably a click to it. So we can do all these events, 4-step, rotate, scale. We can do a lot of things, and we're just going to add a click to him. So now everybody will have this code on the left side by just simply visual editing. The only thing that we'll have to write now is that we want the code to go to the next state. So what we can do is we can just say Buzz, which is the name of our layer. Just like in Sketch, you name your layers, right? So that's basically what this thing in front of it is. This is the name of your layer. And behind that is your layer with all the properties. And in this case, there's like over here, we're going to add to that layer, to the layer name, we're going to add some states. So as you can see over there, that the second block of code, it's about adding the state to it, and it's called state A, which is our name. We could probably call it flying if you want, which would be like a more nicer name, I think. So yeah, we'll just have this code now. So we can just get that layer, which is called Buzz, and we're going to do states, because we want to do something with the states, and just type next. And we'll close it because it's a function. I don't want to get into that too much, but it's like Buzz states next. So now, what we'll have is, if you press Buzz, we'll start flying. Like if anyone is stuck or has any questions, please let us know, because Jonas is over there and he can help you out. So anybody get questions? Still with us? You got a question? Yeah, Jonas, here you go.
If we have Philip Belov, I have a question. If you have more than one state, can we specify to which state can we transition?
Yeah, definitely. So what we can do is, if we'll add another state, let's just add another state to bus. It's quite easy. We can just do state bus again, and we'll get another state. So now we'll just let him go here, and we'll rotate him again. So let's say that if I want to click, I only want to go to, we'll call this like hovering instead of flying, I don't know, random state. So what we can now do is just, instead of next, because we'll travel to the next state, we can do switch. So we can switch to a different state. If we'll then enter the name of the state in between this, we'll now only hover to that state. And we can't go back because it's only going to go to that state. So let's go back to next. That's the interesting thing now, and that's where the state machine kicks in. If we'll go to next, now we'll have 3 states. So just like that, I didn't do any coding. Let's say, for example, say that I don't know any coding. Just like that, just with visual editing, I made this prototype, this thing that I can feel, I can play with, and we can do a lot of things with this. So something that would probably be really nice is to add some curves to it. So bus will feel a little bit like more poppy or something. Let's do that. So what I can do now is say bus.states, because it's the curve on the states we're going to change, so the animation options we call that. And then call animation options. Like as you see while I'm typing, we have all this this whole list of all just like suggestions that you might want to use, which will also help you a lot with like knowing what you can do. So if I'll just layer, and I don't know what I should type for states, it should probably use something with the S. And then over here, and at the second, there's something about states. I should probably use that. And then I want to do something with animation. There's animation options. That would probably be what I want to use. And just like that, I can start specifying the animation options. So let's say that I want to add a curve to this animation. So I can just say curve, and then say what curve I want. So let's say that we want an easing curve. We want to ease the animation a little bit. So now it will ease it. The curve is now a little bit different. What's probably most interesting is adding a curve that's a spring curve. So we're going to add spring, and I'm going to explain you what a spring curve is. A spring curve is pretty much like the physics curve, pretty much. So it's real physics in your animation. So I can explain it best by using a catapult, and then once you drag it back, you will have the tension of the animation. Then once you release it, it will have friction while it's traveling through the air. And it will also have some velocity to it, so we can also make it just go faster. But I think velocity often doesn't improve the animation. So let's say that we want 300 in tension, which is like this value, 300 tension. And we want 20 friction, so we want a little friction while it's going. And then we want 0 velocity. And just like that, once I now click bus, it's pretty poppy. And it totally feels different. This is a total different feeling of my design, of how it interacts. It's quite nice, actually. So this is a nice way of starting to work with Framer and getting to like pretty much upgrade your designs. So if everybody got this example working, has everybody got this? Raise your hands if you got the example working. Okay, so we're going to help you out for the people that didn't get it working. Okay. So can some people let me know where they're stuck or what's happening? Is it just like bugging? I can walk around, but it's being filmed. Yeah, Jonas should probably walk beside that. So pretty much if you just literally type this code, then it will be good. But probably what you will have wrong is you see the error in the bottom, then you probably know that you'll use different indentation. So before everything, after every layer, you should have like one tab. So if I'll just make this like this, then it won't work because I have to use one tab, which is like, this is what CoffeeScript does. It does the indentation. So just make sure that all your indentations are right, and then it should probably work. Okay, so let's go on to the next example then. Next, we don't need any setup or layers or something from the files. We're just going to make a new Framer project. So just make an empty one. Yes, everybody got an empty project? Please raise your hands when you've got like, everybody got their projects? If you raise your hands if you got a new project. Okay, so if everybody can raise their hands, then we can start probably. Yeah? Okay, everybody got a new project. So now what we'll do is we'll remove the device. So we're not going to do a device. So now we'll just have this empty canvas. So it's just empty, there's nothing in there. And what we're going to do is make this draggable thing. So this thing we can interact with. Yeah.
Ребятки, вы как вообще? Отлично, спасибо.
Yeah, okay. So now we just got this empty thing on the right side. And on the left side, we can start writing code, of course. So let's make a new layer, or we're just going to type it this time. So we're going to say that this is the centered one. So we're going to say centered is new layer. Maybe tile is better. Let's make it tile. Tile. As you can see now here, I have tile. You can see it. There's the layer name, like just the same thing as sketch. And then on the right side, you can see which layer it is. So there's my tile layer. So next, we want this tile to have some, like to look like a certain thing. So we're going to add a width to it. I think we'll make it like 100 pixels. Or like make it 150 maybe. Yeah, let's make it 150. So we'll have this tile that's 150 pixels width and 150 pixels height. Maybe we also want to add a border radius to it. Let's do this in visual editing. So we can just go over here, click on the icon, and then we can visually edit it. So next, we can simply really change the border radius, make it like 12 pixels probably, or just edit it over here. You can also do that. And just like that, we can edit our design pretty much. Then the next thing I want to do is want to position it, and I want to center this thing. Like a logical thing now would be to probably set some pixels to it, right? So we'll just set like X is 300 pixels, and then we'll have an offset. And then we'll just start changing it a little bit, or we'll start going in visual design mode and start centering it like this until it snaps. We can also do that. But that won't be very nice once we scale this, because now when I do this, when I do it like this, it will go with it. That's not what I want. I want this thing to always be centered. So what would be next is to just maybe start using some code for this. Start really getting familiar with coding. So we built this thing in Framer. It's called align. So you can just type align, and then align.center. And now it will automatically center it. And if I also do this for the y-axis, then we'll just have two axes, and we'll also center it. So now if I'll scale my right canvas, oh wait, let me refresh it. Oh, I have to update it on scale, but now it will always be centered if I reload it. So if I reload it, it will always be in the center. You can just reload it like any browser or something with Command R if you want, or just press the reload button. Okay, so now I got this layer that's centered. Let's also give it a nice background color.
Sorry, Krijn. Do you think it's possible to make the font?
Yeah, definitely.
Bigger. Thank you. Yes. Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, great. So let's take another color in there. And let's make it 28 alpha, which is a nice Framer color. So just like that, we have Framer blue. And it's now on the right side. So there's a layer. Next, we're going to make like a parent layer for this. So we're going to add this. Oh no, wait. Next, we're first going to make it draggable. So I'll just do tile.draggable.enabled. So we're going to enable dragging is true. So basically, I'm going to say in code now, yes, you can drag this. You can drag this around. And Framer will automatically make it draggable for you. So now I can start dragging this thing around, and it will go away. Like just like that, I make this interactable tile. I can just feel it and drag around. Whoop, like that, it's gone. I reload it, get it back. So now we got this tile that we can drag with. Something that might be nice now is to make it possible to not let it go off the screen, so it won't leave us. So like now it's gone, or now it's gone. But it would be nice to add some constraints to it, so something that compiles it. Just like in Sketch, you would group something. Let's make another layer. we'll add it above this thing, because it should be below it. And then we'll just say, we call it background. BG, background. New layer. So now we'll have this background layer. And this background layer should also be centered. So what we can do now is simply just copy this code, just like this, and center, and like make it centered. So now it's centered. Another thing that we might want is border radius. Just let's copy the border radius. Just like that. Now we'll have some border radius. Okay, so now we'll have this thing that's wrapped around it. Let's make it a little bit bigger. So we'll make it like, I think 300 will be okay. Yeah, so let's make it 300 height, and let's make the width also 300. So now we've got this layer that has another layer behind it. Right, so we can also see it over here. We can see how the hierarchy is in the middle panel. So we can see that background layer is the thing behind it, and the tile is above it. So there's two layers, and the tile is above it. What also would be nice, like a nice visual thing, would be to we have this color class. So with color, you can do a lot of things. So we think that color is really important in designing. So you can just make a new color. And let's make it this color. And then just make it a little bit lighter. So we're going to do lighten. And it's like 20 or something. 40 maybe. 30. Yeah, sweet spot. So now we've got this nice layer that has a nice layer behind it with different color. And then just like that, it's behind it. So now what I notice is once I drag this, it's still like it's not working. Like it's still, of course, just two layers, but they're just positioned over each other, which doesn't give me any added value. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to make the tile layer, and I'm going to add some constraints to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say tile.draggable.constraints is background. So now the constraints of the tile will be the background layer. So you won't be able to go out of it. Like if I now drag it, what will happen is I can't go further. Like we'll go back into this layer. As you can see, just like that, it made it like capture it. So we'll just be able to like don't get out of it. What would be nice now is to put the tile into that basket, so put it in that layer. So what we can do to put it in the background layer is just add super layer to it, and then just say background. So now the tile will be in the background. Yeah. But what you might notice now is that it's, let's see, refresh it. Yeah, now it's okay. So just like that, it will be in the background. Now for this example, what we're going to do is a little bit different. So we're going to remove that, and then we'll just start making it draggable. What we want to do next is we want this to always be centered. So we want this to go back to the center once we release it. So we drag it, and now it goes to that position, but I don't want it to be there. I always want it to be in the center. So what I can do next is, let me just scale this a little bit because the code is messy now. Yeah. What we can do next is make it like animate to the center on the moment that we release it, so on drag end. So on the moment we stop dragging it, which is drag end, then we're going to do an animation and animate it to the center. So what we can do now is we'll insert an event to it, and it will be for the tile, and we're going to do drag end. So drag and then drag end, right? So on the moment that we stop dragging, so we want it to be compiled with dragging, and then on the moment that we stop dragging, we want to go and do something. So now we'll write this code for us, just like this, and we'll have this thing that's going to happen. And on that moment, if I now, like you can print things, which says hello Russia, and then I can just, on the moment that I now stop dragging it, it will say hello Russia. There it says it, hello Russia. So over there, it says hello Russia. So the moment that I release it, it now fires this thing, and we can do things then. So what we want to do then is we're going to animate it to the center. So what we will do is we'll say tile.animate. So we're going to do an animation, tile.animate. And then we're going to say properties, because we want to animate the properties. We're going to change some properties from it. And then just make the X align center. And the eye, wait, the eye also align center. And now, it will always go back to the center of this thing. So every time I release it, it will go back to the center. But it gets working. So with just like 24 lines of code, it's like 24 lines of code with some setup, we got this whole thing working. We can drag things. What we might notice now is that it doesn't really feel nice. Like I won't be able to do this all day. I won't play with this all day with this weird thing. What I might play with though is add a curve to it, so it will feel nice again. So what we can do is we call ease out. So what you might notice now is that it starts going slower. So it goes faster in the beginning and then it slows down. But of course the nicest curve, at least I like it the most, is just add a spring curve to it again. Let's make it the same curve. Let's make it 0. So now it will be like bouncy. It'll just look quite nice. We can make this way bouncier. So let's say that I want it to 200. Oh, let's make it 600. Boom! Now it bounces way more. Let's make it a little bit less friction. We can play with this. So we can start playing with the amount of bounciness that we want. So now it will go like. We have this thing that's animating. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Let's go and present it. And now we made this prototype, this thing that we can drag, and then on the moment we stop dragging it, it will start bouncing. It's quite cool. Like I can play with this a lot, like a half an hour or something. Start just doing this. Feels nice. So like this is just an example of 2 random layers doing this. But if you'll integrate this in your design, you can do a lot of things. So let's say that I want to have the image that I can drag to a folder, and on the moment that I release it, I want it to go in that folder. I want an animation that it sucks in the folder. That's quite nice animation. So that's something that pretty much does the same as this code. So we'll drag it, and then on the moment that it's over it, when you stop dragging it, it will just go into there, and we can make it smaller, for example. We can change everything about this. So that's pretty much like a short, small example of dragging layers. I'll save this. Dragging. Okay.
I'm sorry, Krijn. Maybe we can do a small revision of what you've learned already.
Yeah. So
get sure that every student is on the speed, and then move further.
Yeah, that would be great. So we'll just go by the tables and just take a look.
As you like it.
Yeah, let's do that.
And also, I would like to ask students: are you comfortable with the speed, with the pacing? Everybody, maybe okay. Raise hands if you feel that we need to make it like a bit smaller or slower. Hands, I don't see any. So, okay. So we need. Okay. So we actually need. Maybe we can go just to go like a little bit smaller, or maybe have smaller revisions, small revisions after every part. Like we've learned this, okay, everybody. Okay, we've learned this, okay, everybody.
Okay, so
is it okay?
I can do this. Let's do this for this one. So the thing that we learned now is that we can just set up a new layer and we can assign values to it. So we can make it, give it a width, give it a height. So we can like pretty much design something. This is the same thing that you would do in Sketch, right? You would just get a layer and then start scaling it. Then we also learned that what's like nice about coding is that we can make things dependent on each other. So we can scale them based on, or align them based on the screen height. And that's what code does for us. So it will always be centered, even if we scale it and do anything. So if I'll set this to 200 pixels, then it will be like not nicely aligned. It will be like 200 pixels to that side. So it won't always be centered. But if I want it to always be centered, we can just do align center. And this makes code a lot easier to position things, to start working with things. So that's quite cool. Then we also learned that Framer has this color thing implementation. So we can make a new color and then we can lighten it. So we can start playing with colors. So we can also animate between colors, for example, which is quite cool. So you can animate a color, so you can change the hues of the color. That's the thing that colors do. Then we learned that a tile, that we can assign things to it, so we can make it draggable. So we can enable it to be repositioned on the moment that you grab it and then start dragging it. Then another thing is that we learned is that we can add constraint to it. So we can make it positions like within something when we drag it. So it will never be able to go out of your screen. So it will always go into that layer that wraps it. And then in the end, we started listening to an event. So that event was on the moment that you stopped dragging, which was drag end, which is quite logical. If you stop dragging, drag end, which is the drag end event. And on that moment, we'll start animating it, and we'll animate it to the center. So to the center of this whole thing, of the whole screen. So then we also started adding a curve to it, which made it nice and made it feel nice, and we could start playing with that curve. And like I still can do that. I can make it like less poppy or like more poppy. This feels kind of fun. It's a little bit slower, I guess, in physics because there's less tension, which is the first variable is tension. So it's a little bit slower. And now it's a lot faster. So it will have more tension to it. It will go faster.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
What happens when you do not feel some of those zeros, like in the properties of the spring, for example? Does it like considered it counts as a zero, or do you need like to manually put the zero in? Can you just leave it blank? Do not type.
What do you mean, like for the curve?
Like 610,
yeah.
600, comma 10, comma, or like nothing.
Yeah. So what's interesting now? Let's do this little exercise together. Is that like in this moment you'd like to know that if we like what can we do with this spring thing, pretty much, right? So what's the stuff that's in there? Like I see a number of numbers and I know that the first one is tension, the second one is friction, and the third one is velocity. But I don't know what I can do with it. So then it would be interesting if we'll all just grab our laptops and we would just go to the docs. So just press this icon over here, docs. Let's say that I want to start seeing what a spring curve is. So I can just type spring in here and start looking. Okay, something about spring here. Animation curves. Let's see. And then over here, there's this whole thing about spring curves. And that we can have tension, friction, velocity, tolerance. And you can even have this curve slider on Framer, and then you can see what it does. So it will go slower, friction. And one thing is that we do have to set 3 values, and there's an optional 4th. And the 4th one is, let me just see, tolerance. So there's the minimal, it says over here, minimal threshold before the animation ends.
Well, actually,
which is optional.
To answer your question, you don't have to fill any of those.
Oh yeah.
you can just leave them blank. And this is the default spring. And just as you said, if every value you leave out of it will go to the default value.
This is like the default spring. But then probably when you use a spring animation, you want it to be super bouncy or just a little bouncy. So that's why I only told you about just like the spring with the values. So yeah, that's pretty much about spring. So yeah, I think this is. I hope that this is clear now, and I want to go to a more like UI thing. So we'll start seeing. Yeah. No.
Philippe Bilov. I have a question. Can we somehow put variables into the definition of the curve? For example, can we say like spring and put in some of the parameters of width or height of some element, so that it depends on?
Okay, so your question is that, yeah, gotcha. So what we can do is exactly, we can, like for width, if you want to animate the width or the height, we should change the properties. So that's what the properties are for. So you can just add width to it, and I would say that if we go back, on the moment that it stops animating, we'll make it like 300. Now, when I release it, it will go 300. Okay.
On the next line, you have a curve. When you define a spring, you put like 3 or 4 parameters, like friction and so on. Can we assign, for example, to friction, the width of some object? Can we put a variable into the spring definition or not?
Okay, so
like spring, the bracket opens, and we write, for example, tile width.
Okay, so like the thing is that spring curves are, or like animation curves are defined. So you have like a couple of them. You have easing, you'll have spring curve and like a cubic Bezier curve. But what we can do is, if we want to add a variable, we can say that this is like the curve value is. Let's say that we want this to be spring. Like we want this to reuse this. Now we can just like make a custom spring curve. Let's say that was 120, 10, or like 0 because that will ruin it. And then we can over here, just like this, a curve value. And now it will just still assign that value. You got it? So it will assign the value of that spring curve, and we'll put it in curve value, and then you can put curve value in there. But a spring curve is just like there are 3 or 4 options. So you can't put width in there. That's like.
Or was your question more about having different animation curves for different properties? Like for example, if a
different properties. Can you come over here and I will show you what I mean?
All right, let's start with the second part. We're going to build some UI for a light switch, like to control the lights in the room. We want to build some basic interaction for that. So let's start with creating a new layer by choosing layer from the insert menu. We're going to position it right in the middle of the screen, like that. And let's give it another color. By choosing background, making it lighter. Yeah, something like that. All right, and we call it button, so it's more clear what it is. So we just created a new layer, positioned it on the middle of the screen. Wait, I'm gonna make it a bit lighter because it's not that visible on the beamer. Opacity all the way up. All right. What we want to do now is make a light switch. So we have the background behind the phone, and we want to turn on and off the light. First of all, let's see how we can change the color of the background. We have a special property called screen.background color, and I can tell it, for example, to be red. And this is our screen of the device itself. We have the same principle for the background. It's called the canvas. .background color, and I can say, for example, that it's cyan or another color, any color you wish. So now that we know how we can change the light, it's actually just a color. We're going to hook it up to the button to make the light go on and off. So we're going to delete the last two lines. Refresh the prototype. And for this, the colors stay the same in the background if you delete it. You have to do a hard refresh because the colors out of the device are not changed while you're coding. All right, let's hook it up. So we're going to choose from the insert menu, events, button, click. Wow. Just like that. And we're going to put the light off. So we say canvas dot background color equals black. So whenever you press the button, the canvas dot background color, the background color of the canvas is going to turn black. So let's try it out. Now what we probably want is to turn it back on again if you click it again, which right now it doesn't do. So we need to add some logic, whether the light is currently on or off. So for that, we're going to introduce a new thing that's called a boolean. Booleans are stored in variables and tell it whether something is true or false, on or off. Whether something is, it's like a switch itself. It can either be on or off. So let's create the variable here, which says light is on is true. So we can press hard refresh. Command R for hard refresh. So we see the light is on in first, the white background. Now inside of the function we have here, the on-click handler. So whenever you click it, we're going to add some logic that checks whether the light is currently on. If it's on, we're going to turn the light off. And we flip it around. So here I'm going to check if light is on. And we're gonna put the canvas of background color one tab to the right. Give it some more indentation. So now the canvas of background color line is indented after the if. That means that if something is true, in this case if the light is on, we're gonna execute the line below. So this should already work. So now if you press the green button, it turns dark. And that's all because we set the light is on boolean to true at the first place. So now, when it's off, we have another clause called else. If it's not currently on, we're gonna put the background color to be white. Right, let's refresh. Press the button. Press it again. Nothing happens. Is there anybody who has an idea why the light is still off? Yeah. Exactly. We currently have the light is on value on true, but when we update the canvas background color, we don't say that it's changed. So what we're going to do, inside the block, when the light is on, we're going to tell it it's to get off. So light is on equals false. And now, if you refresh, press the button, get dark. Press it again, gets light. Light's on, and now it's stuck again. It's stuck again. What do we need to do? We forgot one thing. Also in the else clause, we need to flip it around. So we can say light is on equals true. So now we made our flow correct. So whenever the light is on, the boolean is flipped around and we change the background color. So now when you press the button, we can make the light go on and off. How's the speed going for everyone? Is everyone here? Nice. All right. Let's make it a bit more exciting. Who of you knows about this Philips Hue lamps and those other interior lamps which can change color? They don't have only one on and off state, but they have a whole bunch of colors they can produce. Let's try that. So you can, if you want to save this code for later use, because we're going to put it away for now, we can choose to comment it, so it won't get executed. And if you go right-click, no, not right-click, sorry. If you go a command slash, I'm not sure if you can do that on your keyboards as well. Command slash. Well, it gets really dark here. Yeah, you don't actually see it anymore. Oh, now the code is all gone. Without actually deleting it, we just say it shouldn't be executed. Does it work, the commenting? Nice. All right. For the Philips Hue, we're going to use a new interface element. So not just a button, but we want to use something which has a whole degradation of different values. So what worked really well for this is our slider component. It starts at 0, ends at 1. But you can actually change these values. You can go from 0 to another value. And you can have all the values in between. So for that, we're going to create a slider. Let's call it slider. Equals new. Now after new, if you just stop typing, you can see all the completions we got. So we can create colors, layers, animations, video layers. We have a MIDI component for MIDI input. If you have one of those DJ controllers, you can use it to fine-tune your prototype. We have a page component, background layer, scroll component, and slider component. So we're going to use that one. Slider component. As you can see, it's positioned now in the top left. So we want to position it in the middle. And Krijn just showed you can use the align class for centering the x value and the y value. But we also have a shortcut for this. You can also say point. And point is for both x and y at the same time. So if I use point and say align dot center, it's going to center the component in the middle of the screen. All right, let's use the slider. Try to use it. It's really small. As you can see, our finger is way bigger than the slider. This is really impractical. Luckily, the slider has a special property for this. We can go into the properties and add one called knob size, and just say it's 100. That's pretty big. So it's easier to make it move around. All right, and just as taps and swipes and gestures we all mentioned before, you can listen for updates of the slider value. And in this case, it's not about the dragging event we want to know about, but you want to know when the value changes. So when you move the slider, we want to know the new value. So on a new line, we can write down slider dot on, and when you have on, when you typed on, we get the completions for all the things we can listen for. So we can move down until we find the on value change. Let's see. You can also just type it on value change. So we add an arrow, just like the click event. And on the next line, we want to see what the value is actually, where the value currently is at. So we can print it out, so we can see immediate feedback. We press print. And inside the print command, we can write down slider.value. So now each time the slider, its value is changed, we're going to print out the value of the slider to the console, so we can see that it's working. So let's drag around the slider. You can see the numbers change on the right bottom. So right now it goes from 0 to 1. All right, let's hook it up to something more interesting. Just as before, we had the canvas background color, which just turned black and white. We want to have a nice degradation from make the color change. So let's tell it here inside of the function, which is called onValueChange, canvas.backgroundColor equals new color. And in the color we have an element on the next line. For example, the red value. Now we're going to use the value of the slider to change the amount of red of this color. So we can just say slider.value. Right. And we can also remove the print statement now. Reload it so we don't have the console anymore. We can move the slider around and it stays black. It's not what we want. To give you a short explanation why it doesn't seem to change. Colors have different values for their red value, their green value, and the blue value, and an alpha value. And this value goes from, who knows what values it goes. It starts at 0 and it goes all the way to 255, that's right. All the way to 255, that's the max value. So what we can do is here, after slider.value, is say times 255. So we're gonna make it not go from 0 to 1, but from 0 to 255. And now if we drag the slider around, we should see a nice morph from black to red. And if you want to, you can. It's a nice exercise. You can add different sliders for green and yellow. Is that right? Green and blue. That's it. Green and blue and alpha, for example. So you can actually create an entire control panel for all the different colors. Yeah, and just to show as an example, right now we have written down times 255 inside of the R value, but another option is to delete it here and just tell the slider component that its max value is actually 255. And now from now on, the slider won't go from 0 to 1, but from 0 to 255, which is actually nicer, I think. All right, then we go to the next exercise, and Krijn is going to tell you all about that.
Okay, still working? Yep, check. Okay, so we did a lot of exercises now that don't have like really like their UI components, but we haven't really done like a real UI that's straight out of Sketch that we all might know. So let's do that. Let's make this design of Facebook events that's in the folder that you downloaded, and let's make it like pretty much come to life. So if you tap that folder, you see that there's a sketch file in the folder over here. So let's open that sketch file. New tab. Let me zoom out a little bit. So what we can see is that it's basically just this Facebook events thing. It's of the Framer meetup in Seattle. So we organize a lot of meetups around the world where you can learn Framer, talk shop, all that kind of stuff. So this is like the event page for that thing. And we're going to make a new post for that. So we're going to make that whole timeline nicely scrollable, and we're going to be able to create a new post, and then we're going to iterate over that a little bit. So we're going to see what's the nicest way to add a new post. So we'll just have this design. I'm just going to open Framer. Again, just make a new Framer prototype. And now it will automatically see that I have a sketch file open, as you can see over here. You can change the amount, like the amount of X's that you want it to import. So you can do a 2x or 1x. So let's just do 1x because we designed it for the iPhone 6. Let's just press import and let Framer do the magic. So now we just press the import button, and now our design is in that phone. So we can start playing around with it. As you can see on the right, let me just make this a little bit bigger. Let's see, a little bit smaller. Is this still readable? Yeah, right. Okay. As you can see on the right side over here, you can see that we have a couple of layers that are in our sketch file and a couple of groups. So we'll see that we have the whole screen here, which is pretty much like the whole prototype or like the whole design. And then we'll have a post screen where the post is in. We'll have the navbar, which is the navbar. And then we have this group screen that is a timeline because it has a button, like the right button that's just loose. So first, it would probably be nice to just make that whole timeline scrollable, right? So let's just add basic interaction so it feels okay. So as you can see, it's over here. It's called a group. So let's just start making that scrollable. What we can really easily do is say scroll, which is like our new scroll component, is scroll component.wrap. And what wrap does, it automatically sees like the layer that you have, which is like super high in this case, and we masked it. And it wraps that, and then it's automatically around it, and you can immediately scroll it. So let's just type wrap, and then we'll need to access the group layer, so the one that's in our sketch file right now, and that we can see here on the right. So we're going to have to call sketch dot. So just call it from the sketch file that's declared above. So you can see over there, you can see that we call it sketch, our whole import. And now we can just call group. Like this. And now this whole timeline is scrollable, just like that. Just one line of code, and we can scroll through it. That's quite nice. But what we might notice is that we can also drag this from left to the right, and that's not something we want. And Yeah, in the bottom it has some problems with the below like button that's behind the nav bar. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it only scrollable vertically, which is pretty easy. So you can just get the scroll component, scroll, and then say scroll horizontal, and set that to false, just like we know from Booleans. And now we can really easily just make it only scrollable vertically. So now we can't anymore scroll horizontally. It's like, yeah, I can maybe make it a bit larger, but it will mess up the width, so I'm just going to leave it like this. So just like that, now we got this prototype of just a vertical timeline, just this timeline where you can scroll through. Okay, let's go on and solve that other issue that we still had with our import. So the other issue was that the like button of the lowest post, it would be behind the nav bar. So this thing that scroll component have is content inset. So you can set a padding or an indentation to the content. So let's do that right now. Let's just add some indentation to it. Scroll.content inset is, and then we're going to say bottom, and I think it's about 60 pixels or something. And now it will nicely be above the nav bar, as you can see over there. So now we already got this nice prototype, Facebook timeline of this event. But we know that we want to make like the post interaction nice. So we're going to think about how will this work, and we're going to maybe give this to users in like an hour or something. So it would be cool to like make this nicely transition to the view. So you can see over here that we have this write button, write a post. We can leverage that to animate the post screen, which is on the right side, out of the screen, so you can see that. Let's just start making a click event for that write button. So if you'll just get like sketch.write, because we want the write layer in our sketch file, in our sketch import, and we want to do a click on that. So on events.click. And you can also do this with the insert menu if you want. If you would think that's easier, just go into event and then go into write and then click, and it will also work. There's also a shorthand for clicks. So now you see me writing on events click. So you can also make this move or other events. But let's just do a shorthand real quick. You can also just do on click, which is like a little bit shorter, a little bit nicer, and we don't have to, because we just want to have the click event. So now we'll get like a click event once I press that button. So we'll see hello, and let's see if it works. Yeah, it works. So now we get a click event once we click on that button. Next would be to animate the screen, like the post screen, into the view. What's interesting now is what we notice is we can do an animation, just slide it in, and then again do a different animation for sliding it out. But what we learned is that we often have states in our UIs. So it would be cool, this is like the perfect example of states, where this thing only has two states, where it's in the view and out of the view. So we can really easily just make a live state for it, straight in Framer. So let's just go over here and make a state for the post view. So we're just going to do sketch.post, which is like the view, as we can see over here, post on the right. And we're going to states.add. We're going to add a state to it. And this is like visible, we're going to call it. And when it's visible, the x value is going to be 0, because we want it's now on the right, and we want it to be totally on the left side. So just like that, we got like this nice, just this block of code. It's really short to add a state to it. Then next, we could do sketch.states.next, which is like us switching to a state. So every time I press the click, it's going to go to the next state. So now when I press let me just refresh it. Sketch.post.states.next, sorry. So now we get like this animation of the post coming in. And now we have a little issue, because we want it to go out, right? We also want to be able to cancel our post. So let's just really quickly make this cancel button work. As you can see, there's a cancel button over here that we also have from Sketch. So let's just copy this code and also make it work for the cancel button. Cancel. And just also add sketch.states.next. As you can see right now, we can start transitioning between two views, just like that. It's pretty easy. What's the problem right now is if I click twice, it will go back, right? So it will switch, start hammering. We don't want that. So we can declare not next, the next state, but we can start switching states. So switch to a state once we click the right button, because we always want it to open when we click the right button. So if we want that, then we can just change this to switch, like we did earlier, and then say, what do we call it? Visible. And now we'll just have like, let me make this a little bit bigger. It won't mess it up. Yeah. And now we'll have this switch statement in there. Oh, it's in there. Yeah. Should probably make this, yeah, just like that. So it messes up the indentation. We also want to do the same for like going back to the default state with cancel. So we can just copy this code and then set default here, because that's the default state. So we can just do default. And now what we'll have is, let me make this a little bit bigger again. We'll be able to write post, it will come in, and we'll write out. And if I click this really quickly, it will still come in. I will just trigger it again. So now we got this prototype of this app, and it's pretty quick. We did this, but I might notice that it isn't that nice of like making it slide in from the right. I maybe want to make it come from the bottom, like as an iOS model. So that could be cool. Let's try that out real quick. Let's start iterating over this design. So what we could do is pretty easily just change the x value of that post thing. So let's just go sketch.post.x, and let's set it to 0. Something that we might notice now is that like the post is now nicely overwritten immediately, so we'll immediately have it over the whole view. But we also want it to be below the view, right? So we want it to come over it. We'll do that by just setting the value in pixels. So we can just say I think screen is 755. So now it's 1334. So now it's below it. So it's like if you watch over here, it's right there. It's right below the screen. What would be nicer is, this is also one of those code things, is we can just get the height and the width of the screen. So we can just simply say screen.height. And now it will also be 1334, but then with code, which is like easier to do. Because over time you might notice that we also want to do this design for like iPhone 6 Plus or iPad, and then this will scale to iPad and iPhone 6 Plus, because it will still use the I value of the screen height, which is a lot easier. So probably next, now when I click this, it won't do anything, of course, because our state's still wrong. So the only thing we'll have to change now about our state is just make this the I value. And now when I click it, let me just refresh it real quick. Boom, it will come up from the bottom. And this is how we can start iterating really quick over our design and start seeing how we might want this thing to work and how we want this thing to interact. So now we'll just go up and above. Now this doesn't feel really nice yet, so like a scroll, but I wanted to make it look a little bit nicer. Let's add some curves to it again. I don't know if you already did this with states, I think. So we'll just do sketch. Sketch.states.animation options, and then we're going to set the curve. So let's make this an easing curve, and let's make it a little bit quicker too. So we're going to just change the time for it too. Just make it like what would be nice, 0.3 seconds or something. Let me see what's wrong. Oh, sorry, I forgot the layer again. Sketch.posts. Okay, just like that. And now what we can do is we just press this thing, and it will come in a little bit quicker. And we'll just go to the bottom. Now, I don't think this is really nice because I like physics curves a lot, so we're probably going to go back to that one. Maybe use a curve with like ease in, ease out. So it's going to ease in and then go faster and then go slower out. So we can just do that, try that one out. Feels a little bit better, but let's just not make a nice spring curve for it. Spring. And then just like give it 220, 0. And now we'll have like this nice, just a little bit, can we go a little bit quicker maybe? That's too much bounce. Let's make it 30. So just like this, we can quickly iterate over it, change it, see how we want it to feel. And they start to feel good. And now there's a little bounce on it, and it just works really nicely. So we'll have this nice Facebook prototype that we can start working with. And this would work for anything that you designed. So if you just designed this app for the Apple Watch, you can just import it, start playing with it, start seeing how it works, and then start editing the curves, start changing the way it feels. And just like that, you can really quickly pretty much bring your designs to life, which is quite cool. And then also validate how it works and pioneer total new interactions. So that's another little example we just did. And next, I wanna highlight a feature that's also really powerful in using code. So as you know, as designers, we're really a lot of designers are really eager to use really pretty pictures in their designs and the most beautiful people they can find in the whole world, and then put them in an avatar, and then everything just looks great. But if you're, for example, designing Facebook timeline, you know that there's people posting all kinds of stuff in that thing, and it's going to look terrible in real life. It looks nice with a picture of Leonardo DiCaprio in it, but it doesn't look nice once you put some weird cat photo in it that someone took at home. So what's really important about designing is designing with real data and designing with real stuff. So that's quite an important thing, and I think that us as designers have a feeling to really easily go into nice content and that kind of stuff. But what I always try to do as a designer is I try to put the worst content I can find in it. And then if it then still works, then I know it's good, it's visually good design. It doesn't mean that it's good design interaction-wise, but visually it's a good design then. So that's an interesting thing to try out. And what might be interesting is to just get real data from your real website or from your product into Framer. And because we're totally web-based, what we can do is we can just use APIs, APIs, just databases. We can just connect them to our Framer prototype. Now we're going to use a local database, or we're just going to make an array for ourselves, and we're going to put some data in. I'll explain you what this is. And we can start working with real data in our designs, which is a really valuable asset, I think. So we'll again start a new Framer project, I think. That's nice. And I did this real data.framer thingy in there. Sorry, we're going to open that. Just drag it into the icon. And then you have real data opened. So the next thing that we want to do is I added some images for us to use. Jorn made this prototype of this movie app. And it's actually pretty nice. And you can scroll through it, and there's these nice posters. But we want to try it with posters. These are straight from Truct, which is this big movie indexing database. And we're going to try making a design for movies. So we're going to make a nice image on the left, and we're going to make some nice styles for it. So we'll probably start by just making a scroll component, right? So we want something to be scrollable. So now we'll just say scroll is new scroll component. Just like that, we can create a component. So now we got this scroll thing, this layer that's able to handle things that we can add things to, and then we can scroll. And let's just make it the height of the screen always. So let's make it the screen height. We're going into a little bit of a more programming and nicely set up pace. So it's height, width, screen.width. Okay, now it covers the whole screen. Then next, we probably want to add some layers to it. So we're gonna add some, or just add some layers. But before we do that, we're first gonna make our data. So let's just comment this. It's gonna disappear. Select all of it, and just do command \, and it's gone. So now it won't execute this. Above this, we're gonna make some data that we're gonna be able to use. So as you can see in the images folder in your let's just go over here, real data, Jonas workshop, real data, and just go into the image folder. And over here we have all these movie posters that we can use in our design. So as you can see, I named them from 1 to 10, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. And we can easily just store those in some variable. So as you know, you have these variables things that you can assign things to, but we can also store data in this. So let's try it out. So let's say we call this array movies. And an array, you type this as 2 of these brackets. And basically what this is like, imagine having a bin, like this big box with like dividers in it. So you pretty much have like a lot of boxes next to each other, which is like the big box. And you can just put things in those like empty boxes. So you can just put like in place 1, we're gonna put like some random thing, and then in the second place we're gonna put something, and in the third place. And if I then want to grab something, and I want to grab the thing that I did in the first place, I'm just going to call the first place. I'm just going to grab it, right? So if it's this box and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, if I'll put a cat in the first one, and I want to grab the cat, I'm going to put my hand in the first one, I'm going to grab the cat, right? So this is basically the same as code, and that's what you do with this. So let's just as a test, put just like some text in there. Just say like hello, and it doesn't matter what you say. What we can then do is, let's print it out, so we'll see what the value is of this. We can just say movies. And as you can see, it says here that it's hello with like the brackets, so it's an array. Next, what we would like to do is get the first value of this. So we put one string in there, or 1 piece of text. What we can also do is just add a second one, with just like a comma to separate it. And then we call this one world, for example. Now it has 2 values. And now we only want to get the first one. So we only want to get the hello. What we can really easily do then is say we want the element in place 0. And now we'll only get the hello. So we can really easily store it in this bin. Like a place, an array starts counting from 0, which is quite an interesting thing that you have to get used to. So in code we don't start counting from 1, but we start with 0. So now we'll get the value that's placed in the 0. So in the beginning of the box. If I want to get the second value, I can just type 1, refresh, and there it is, there's a second value. So we're going to do the same with some images now. As we know, we have like the images 1 to 10, and I think they're all they're all JPEGs. So let's just start adding those images into this array. Let's comment this real quickly. Let's just start adding 1.jpg, 2.jpg, and until we're at 10. Let's start doing it. 2.jpg. 3, 4, 5. This could be all type of images. So if I would want to put like gravity.jpg in there, that we can also just type gravity.jpg. 5, 6, 7, 8. So 2 more. Okay, so now we got this whole box filled with images. 9, 10. So we got this box filled with images, and we're going to create this list with all these images in there, which is going to be interesting because we want the value of everything in that box. We could do this by hand by typing new layer. Layer is new. You don't have to type with me, by the way. Layer is new layer, and then say that it should have this value. But that's really like not handy because we have to do it 10 times, and that takes a lot of time, and it's not nice. And we want to make this scale a little bit, and we want to make this automatically loop through it. What we can use then is, I actually already hinted it, is a loop. And what a loop does, it basically says it sees the array, and you can just get every element from it. So you get first, then the second, then the third, then the fourth, and it runs through it every time until you're at 10, until you're at the max value. So we can say for movie in movies. And what will happen now, if I'll print out movie now, it will log all the JPEGs, which is an interesting thing. So it does like, as you can see, it starts with the first one. So it says 1, it loops through it, then it goes to the second one, then to the third one, then to the fourth one, then to the fifth one. So we just go through it like that. For example, if I'll just type a dash after it, after everything it will say a dash. So it goes through it vertically. So every time it loops through it once. What we're going to want to do is create a new layer in this loop. And we're going to make it lower, and we're going to add it to the scroll that we did earlier. So I'm just going to copy that thing that we commented first. And we're just going to uncomment it. So now we have the scroll again. And it's just like there above movies, because we want it to be there to put our movies in. Okay, so next we're going to create a layer. which you all know, is layer. So we're going to call this tile, and we're going to new layer. You can also insert it still if you want, if you think that's easier. And what we're going to do is we're going to give it some height. Let's make it like 100, 200 pixels. 300 maybe. Yeah, let's make it 300 pixels. And let's make it the screen width. But then maybe a little bit less, so we can see some margin on the sides. So let's make it, let's put 20 or 40 below it. So 40 I think is nice. And from the X side, add 20 to it. Or we could just align center, which is probably even nicer to use. So now we got this centered layer. So this layer that's centered and is a little bit smaller than the screen width. So that's pretty obvious, right? But we don't have our data in this yet. What's nice is we can now just say image, and then just like this, like all the images, if you go to the Framer folder, basically every Framer project looks like this. And this is what we read. And then the images folder are all images. So we want to go to that folder. So what we'll have to say is that it goes to images, and then we want it to be the image. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to do it like this. It's a hashtag, I think. That's $. And then we'll have to put hashtag. Okay. So hashtag, and then we'll put the movie in there. So now we'll start loading movies. So in every tile, it starts loading an image of the movie, which is quite cool, right? So we're looping through this, and it's inserting all the data in our prototype. What we know is that it's stacking all of them. So if we'll now go to a tile, which you can see over here, it's creating 10 tiles for us, and it's stacking all of them. Let's make it horizontal. So now we'll just add an eye. Let's add it over here. And let's just say we know that this is 300 height, and we want 20 margin in it. So it's 320. And then times what are we going to do it? That's an interesting thing, right? Because we'll have to know how much we'll have to calculate it, or how much below it. What we can do in a for loop then is just add an I, comma I. So what we'll have now is in there, it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it says at which index you are. So if I'll just, let me just remove this one so it won't get an error. If I'll now print the I value, it will say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9. So that's quite nice. That's exactly what we want. So let's just grab that I, the 320 times I. And just like that, we got this whole list of images on the right side. It's actually putting it quite funny with the panda, but just got this list. But we can't scroll it yet. That's annoying. We can't just like scroll through it. Let's just add it to the scroll component then. So we can just do super layer, scroll. We want it to be the content of the super layer, so we do scroll.content. Oh. And just like that, we got the scrollable list of movies. It's quite cool, all loaded from this array, from this thing. And if you connect it to a database, like if you want to know what developers do, like when they load things into the front end of the website, so into the thing that you see on the site, they load this kind of data. They load arrays, JSON objects, and pretty much what they do is they just get that data and they loop through it, and then they show it to you. This is basically how coding works. So now you can call yourself an engineer already, I think. That's probably quite cool. So just update your bios everywhere, LinkedIn, do it. You can do it. It's cool. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So now we loaded data. Let's make this nicely scrollable horizontal. Let's put it off. Scroll.horizontal is false. Scroll horizontal is false. And just like that, we got this nice prototype with real data. So I think I'm going to give the word to Jonas now, which is going to be the last example, I think. And it's going to be quite cool because we're going to prototype for VR now. So yeah, that's quite cool. So you can start designing with this.
Yeah, thanks. All right, are you ready for the last part? We're going to build VR prototype, which I think is pretty exciting. For that, we first need to visit a URL, but we included that for you. So if you go into the folder with the projects and you open the VR project, so drag it to Framer, it tells you to go to the URL. So you copy that into our browser. Let me introduce you to components. So we had some components like slider component and page component and scroll component, and those are all part of the main library of Framer. But it's also possible to extend that framework with your own components. There are some big companies using Framer, and they created entire libraries for their users, like with all the main components of their company, to make it really easily drag and drop and be ready. So VR component is an example of that. You can download it here. This button, which says clone or download, and you press download zip. It's going to copy it over. And the GitHub has a nice description about what it is. So the VR component is a virtual reality component for Framer. It uses the cube map technique to position you inside another world. The cube map is like a big box, and the camera is positioned right in the center of the box. And we put images on all the sides, so it looks like you're really there. And there's no explanation about all the properties it has. So it behaves a lot like normal Framer layers and Framer components, but it has a set of different properties, like, for example, the front, right, back, left, and top properties, which are there for all the sides of the cube. So you can add an image to the top, an image to the bottom, add images to the sides. You can allow panning, so when you use it on your mobile phone, you can pan around with your finger. When you open it on your mobile phone, you can also look around by just using your phone like you would expect, like a normal VR headset would work, for example. And you can use arrow keys in the browser. And it looks a bit like this. When you, there's a bit of light there. When you add a VR component, you require it, and then you put these curly braces around it. And then on the next lines, you're just going to create it like a layer or another component, which you already did. And we're going to add the images. So let's do that now. Go to the just downloaded VR components. Yeah, I already did. So for the who didn't download it yet, you could download it through the download zip button on GitHub. And we're going to open the VR components. No, we already had one open. So we have this folder here, and there's one file called vrcomponent.coffee. So all the code you've written today is all CoffeeScript. So Framer works with this CoffeeScript language. And if you want to put this CoffeeScript in a separate file, you call it something, whatever, .coffee. So here's a vrcomponent.coffee. It's just a file with a lot of code inside. And to make it easier, we allow drag and drop as well. Just like with images, you can drag the component on VR. And it should write the code for you to import it. Just like that. Right, they're going to switch a device to no device, so we have the entire canvas. And what we should not forget here is to add curly braces around the VR component on the top left. These nice curly braces. And now, if I create a VR component, I call it VR equals new VR component. This is what we're going to see on the right. So we didn't do anything yet, except for creating a new VR component. And we got a lot of stuff happening here. So we see in the layer inspector, we now have a VR layer, a world layer, and all these bottom, top, left, back, right, and front layers. So let's drag it around. Oh yeah, it's easier. I'm going to put it full screen. So as you can see, we are in this cube. And we can just drag it around on our desktop. There's not much to see yet. I'm going to show you a quick example what actually is happening right now. So I go to our blog. You don't have to follow along. Yeah, this is our blog post about the VR component when we just introduced it. This is the video you saw in the first presentation. And down here, we have an example of what's actually going on. So here you have all the size of the cube, the top, left, front, right, and back. And we fold the cube around you, and you are in this other world. I think this clarifies it a lot. And this is about for the next step. Let's go back to Framer. All right, what we want to do now is add those images for all the sides for the top left, and we got those included in the download. So when you go to the cube maps, we have two. You can pick either one. I go for the park, and what I'm going to do is just drag and drop all of these images into our project. Right. On drag and drop, when you drop an image in Framer, it's going to create all these layers, which we don't want now. So I'm going to, we only want the strings. So by dragging and dropping them in, it's already added the images to the images folder. And we're going to delete all the layers, so we're just left with the strings from here. So let's do that. Just like that. Indent them. Select all the properties, and now we need to name them. So the VR component uses the same names as these images are called. So you can call back is bottom, small letters. Right, and top. Right, so now we're in this park, and you can just flick it around. You can see, if you create these components for yourself, you can make it really easy to set up. Yes? Okay. These pictures are from a website, and you can use them freely. They're open source. I might have included it. I think if you visit the GitHub page, there must be a link somewhere.
And they're also in that folder that you just got, which has the VR component.coffee. If you go into to the folder that's with it, then there are the images in there. So you can just add those.
Oh, you mean? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And someone on Facebook also replied with an instruction how you can create your own cube maps if you want to. Yeah, so it follows all the Framer APIs, are they called? Like the code looks pretty similar to layers, and it behaves as you expect. So right now, for example, if you're looking around, it might be interesting to know where you are looking at, so you can respond to it. You can add new interactions. So we can just listen to changes. So we call it VR on. And now, if I don't remember anymore, I can go back to our VR component GitHub page, and there we have the API. So I can say events. There they are. We want to listen for events, the orientation change event. So I'll code it here, on orientation change, add the arrow. And we can print out, for example, the heading. So now if I put it full screen, it prints out the direction you're looking at. And the heading goes from 0 all the way to 360 degrees while you're turning around. And we have another value called elevation, which goes from plus 90 degrees up to minus 90 degrees down.
Do backflip.
And we have some tilt. Like if you're, that only works on mobile, but if you have your mobile phone, you can also register how much the phone is tilted, which can be useful, for example, to keep all the text straight. Or when you're creating a game, I created a puzzle game, for example, to exactly match a certain figure. I can show you. Space puzzle. So it all works in the browser. So we just load it up here. There's Earth. There's the International Space Station. And we can map these like a puzzle game. Yeah. So you can extend it. There's also already some people who did some experiments with VR. Building some prototypes, like for example, some overlay, how it would be if you would wear an augmented reality headset and would add all this extra information about your friends and stuff. Yeah. So what I gotta add is it's not an advanced VR, as advanced as a gaming engine like Unity, for example, and there's some others, which are really advanced and you can create whatever you want, but their learning curve is way higher, I think. The setup is pretty difficult to get anything done. So for simple UI experiments, this component can be really powerful.
Everybody got that working? VR stuff? It's cool, right? Okay. I think the workshop is that we covered all bases of getting started with Framer, I think. And I think that you should now be able to get started, get around, start working, and we would love to see your stuff. So if you wanna get some feedback or something, just give us a message on Facebook, and we'll help you guys out. And it would be really cool to see you make some stuff and share it. It's nice.
Yeah.
So I think that was our talk on designing with Framer.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for having us.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Great.